All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce you to your presenter, Mr. Alvin Baker, and Alvin is a mental health wellness counselor here at our Gulf Park location of the USM University of Southern Mississippi, and he'll be presenting on self-care today.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good.
Physically.
So Jennifer, I think in order for me to share my screen, you have to make me the host. Is that correct?
See if you can share, because I put it so anybody could share.
Okay.
See if it'll let you.
Okay. Did that work? Did everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll come back to that in a second. So today we're going to talk about self-care. There's a lot of buzz around self-care. I'm sure all of you have heard the term. It gets thrown around a lot these days. I think there's a lot of misinterpretations of what self-care means, what it is, what it isn't. I don't know how interactive you guys like to be, but I'm curious to know what you all consider self-care to be.
Sleeping in.
Okay.
Meditation.
Okay, good.
I would say doing things that kind of fill my bucket and also taking care of myself spiritually.
Good. Very good. Okay, so those are all great examples. Often I won't say often. Those are three answers that are all very valid, good answers. Sometimes you hear things like going shopping, which can be self-care, could also be dangerous, right? It could lead to more stress if you stretch yourself too thin financially. Consuming alcohol, that could be problematic, right? It could also be nice and relaxing from time to time, but could be problematic if that's what you rely on to decompress or relieve stress in your life. So primarily what we are at least in the mental health space, what we're referring to as self-care activities are things that you guys mentioned. Socializing, exercising, interacting with loved ones, decompressing, sleeping in on the weekends when you have the time to do it and it's not going to be a problem for you and you're not going to be late for work on the weekdays. These are all good examples of self-care. When we're referring to the importance of self-care, why do we think self-care is important?
So I can continue helping my family, so I can be available here at work.
Very good. Yes. And what we refer to that as is a protective factor. And I'll explore. Somebody said avoid burnout in the chat. Very true. We'll talk more about what protective factors are in a minute. But what I want to stress right now is that self-care is a preventative practice, right? It's not meant to be reactionary. Of course, it can be if we've spent 3 months pulling our hairs out and we're losing our minds and we need a vacation. There's nothing wrong with taking a vacation. But what we're talking about today is the form of self-care that is ongoing maintenance self-care that protects you from mounting stress becoming an issue in the first place, rather than something we do in response to stress or anxiety or depression or any of these things. So it's important for everyone, all of us, to ensure that we're looking at our self-care practices in terms of the same way we think about a diet, right? If we continually fill our bodies with junk, we're going to have health problems. If we ensure that we're getting the vitamins and nutrients that we need, we're maintaining our well-being, right? So we want to think about self-care as it relates to mental health in the same way. We need a steady diet of good self-care practices in order to keep ourselves healthy, not just when we've had enough, we've got to stop and do something different in order to replenish. This should be considered an ongoing form of maintenance in our lives, much like our dietary intake. Does that make sense? So what I'd like to do is share my screen and go over a self-care assessment. So when you look at this assessment, essentially what we're going to do is for each of these items, and I won't do this with you all line by line, just because that, you know, if you don't have this on paper, it's not really conducive to going through each item. But I will share this with you all. Jennifer, I don't know if you can disseminate that after I share it with you.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'll share it with Jennifer and she can share it with you all after the meeting. But for each of these are different categories of self-care. So we've got physical self-care, such as our diet or exercise, things like that. And for each of these items, you get the opportunity to rate this a 1, I do this very poorly, 2, I do this okay, 3, I do this well. And after you've done the whole list, which is 3 pages long, yeah, you can then choose to put a star or check the star box for the 2 or 3. For the purposes of this handout, it's actually 2. The 2 things that you feel like you're not doing very well that would make the biggest impact if you were to improve upon. So for example, someone said meditation. Let's say you're a person that has in the past had great benefit from the practice of meditation, but it's fallen by the wayside and you're not doing it very much anymore, and you mark that a 1 or a 2 on your assessment. And let's say taking breaks at work, you know that you should do that and you feel better when you do that, but you've marked it a 1 or a 2, and you feel like those are the 2 things out of this whole list. And now you're going to have a long list of things to look at. But if you overwhelm yourself with trying to make a complete overhaul of every aspect of your life, it's not going to work, right? Change is incremental and progressive. So we need to prioritize the 1 or 2 things, maybe 3 things that we feel like are having or would have the most positive impact if we were to prioritize them more. Which brings me to another point about prioritization. I'm going to stop the share for a second. Often in life, we think of self-care activities as luxuries, right? Things that we wish we could do, or we would do if we had more time, or things that are nice to do when we have the chance, but we don't have the opportunity to very often. And for some of the bigger forms of self-care, like taking a vacation, that may be true. But for daily maintenance types of self-care, those need to be made a priority, not a luxury, not something you would like to do or will do when you get the time. Kim said, when I asked why is self-care important, she said, so that I can be here, be present, and perform, for lack of a better, maybe rephrasing things a little bit, but perform to the best of my ability when I need to be on task. And so why would that not be a priority in our lives? Why would it feel like that's a luxury, and what we're supposed to do is just drive ourselves into the ground and stress ourselves out to the absolute maximum capacity we have, and then boil over before we do anything to take care of ourselves? It's not efficient, right? To approach our lives that way. We're going to get more done by taking care of ourselves, even if that taking care of ourselves is engaging in recreational activities that we may often think of as being a luxury. We're going to get more done when we're tasked with being efficient and productive if we're maintaining our self-care on a daily and weekly basis. So, sorry, I keep jumping back and forth here. But when you complete this assessment and you mark a star next to the 1, 2, or 3 things that you think will have the most impact to improve upon, we're going to call those protective factors. So protective factors are things that contribute to mental health and allow a person to be resilient in the face of challenges. Again, that's proactive language, right? That's not reactionary. When we're contributing to our mental health, we're not reacting to poor mental health. We're contributing to the overall sense of well-being we have day to day. And we're allowing ourselves to be resilient in the face of challenges in the future. Be resilient in the challenges we face coming on. Not, okay, now I face a challenge, now I must do something to take care of myself, but rather just taking care of ourselves day to day. So someone with a lot of protective factors will be better equipped to overcome life's obstacles. Many protective factors are out of your control. You can't, dictate what your genetics are going to be. You can't dictate your, at least not your starting socioeconomic class or race or health and well-being sometimes. But you can dictate how you spend your day. You can dictate what you prioritize in your life and what you do not.
Alvin,
So I'm sorry, yes.
I had a question.
Mhm.
So are the protective factors maybe something that increases your resiliency to cope with things?
That's right. That's exactly right. So the things that we are already good at, that's another important thing to consider when you go through this list. There may be things that you mark a 3 that you're already doing very well, that you don't need to prioritize more. But I encourage you, when you go through the list, anything that you mark a 3 that you're already doing well, stop for a moment and think about what value and quality of life that gives you, and understand that it's not something that you should ever feel guilty about doing. It's not something that you're doing. You're not being irresponsible by doing that thing. Even if sometimes you're prioritizing that thing over getting something that we would traditionally consider productive done, you're still contributing to your overall well-being. And without well-being, you're not going to get anything done. Your life's going to be a mess. And then what are we doing here? If we're not going to enjoy any aspect of our lives, then what's the point, right? So, for example, if you were to say, I'm already very good at sleeping, just the first thing I saw. I sleep 8 to 10 hours a night, and my husband or my wife or my significant other tells me I sleep too much. But if I don't get enough sleep, I feel stressed, I feel tired, I feel fatigued, and I can't get anything done. And that's just how much sleep I need. Don't feel like you need to change that to smash 1 more hour of productivity into your day, because if 9 hours of sleep is what you need to get in order for you to feel rested, then 9 hours of sleep is what you need to get. And if you get 8 and you don't feel as well rested, you got an extra hour in your day, but you're less productive and less efficient all day long. You haven't saved yourself any time. You aren't any more productive. You just feel tired all day. Does that make sense? So not only when you go through this list should you try to prioritize 1 or 2 things that you feel like you're not doing well, that would make a big impact, but also the things that you are doing well already. Look at those 3s and positively reinforce that for yourself. Tell yourself that those are good things to do, that they're not things that I should consider luxuries. They're not things I should consider irresponsible. Those are things that are protecting my overall mental health and well-being. Okay, so that brings you to this, and this is where things, we have this opportunity to do something with this information that we're uncovering about ourselves, right? So we're doing this introspection, we're determining, I really feel replenished and rejuvenated and more content in my life when I spend enough time communicating with my friends, but I don't do that enough. And that's something I know I need to do. We can say that is one of the things we would like to improve, right? Communicating with friends or socializing. Then we want to really define and think about what difference that would make in our lives. So how would things be different if we were to implement that change? If we were to stop saying, yeah, I know I need to talk to my friends more often, but I just don't have the time. I'll do it when I have a break from work, or I'll do it when I'm in town, if we live away from our hometowns. What would be different if you actually did it? How would it impact your life? And often what you're going to see written there is I'd be happier, or I'd feel more energy, or I'd be more satisfied with my day-to-day life, or I'd feel more connected to others, right? Those things, it's funny what we define as being luxuries and what we define as being priorities. When you see the things written in those spaces about how your life would be different, would you deprioritize happiness? Would you deprioritize feeling connected in the world? Would you deprioritize having a higher satisfaction in your life? No. So why deprioritize the things that are going to help you achieve that, right? So the purpose of these two spaces is to help you understand why you're working towards this goal, why it matters to make these positive changes in your life, why it matters to prioritize, not just get around to self-care. Okay. Does that make sense? Then we can use these two spaces to identify specific steps or actions that we can take to improve these things. So going back to the same example of communicating more with friends. What changes can we make in our schedule? What changes can we make in our prioritization, in our time management, and what can we do less of? Can we cut out 30 minutes of TV a week and use that time to contact a friend? How can we ensure that we're going to make some changes, some adjustments in our lives in order to be able to give ourselves the time we need to prioritize our self-care activities? So you're creating an action plan, right? You're identifying a goal, what you will achieve by reaching the goal, and ways that you can ensure that you attain that goal. Make sense? So doing this, going through this assessment and going through this little worksheet related to the assessment, 20 minutes, maybe, probably more like 10, 15, won't take you a whole lot of time, but could make pretty drastic changes in your lives if you uncover something that is really going to make an impact. That makes sense?
It does.
Okay, good. Let me stop sharing for a second here. Okay, does anybody have any feedback or anything that they were thinking of when I was going through that little explanation of self-care?
I was wondering if it would be better to do it with more, well, another person, kind of to look over your answers and maybe make it easier to identify what to do if you have a lot of things.
Yeah, sure. That's a great idea. I hadn't considered that. Yeah,
think
often
maybe
our,
it's
our
better.
spouses know us better than we do, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and then if you have a lot of choices, there are certain things probably that make more sense
Mhm.
objectively than subjectively.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a really good idea. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Well,
Someone in the chat
one
says,
of the-
why is it so difficult to do? I'm not sure what that means. Can you clarify? And somebody else was about to talk. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
One of the things that I do is I find it fulfilling to stay in touch with family and friends, but it's hard to remember. So
Mm.
I calendar, like, depending on how often, like 4 to 8 weeks, call so-and-so or lunch with so-and-so, or, I mean, it sounds like a chore. It's not a chore. It's just a reminder.
That's right. That's right. Very good. And I'm glad you said that last part. It sounds like a chore. It's not a chore. All that is prioritization. So we schedule these other aspects of our lives when our professional lives, we schedule when we're going to have a conversation with a colleague, right? We schedule when we're going to do our paperwork. We schedule when we're going to have a meeting. But we think we can sometimes, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouths, but sometimes we think like, well, that seems too formal to schedule a chat. Well, if it's going to get sucked up into the ether and not get done if you don't, then set the time aside. Set the time aside. Make sure you have it scheduled. It's planned for you. That's you prioritizing that this is something that is important to me. So very good. Thank you for sharing.
It might be more about making it like, instead of calling a meeting, calling it something else. Like a
Right.
get together or date or something. And
Mhm.
that way it seems less onerous.
Right. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and it can be malleable too, right? So and whoever that was of the members that shared that about scheduling the time to chat, it could be call a friend, right? Like Fridays at 5:30 when I'm done with work for the week. I'm going to call somebody. I'm just going to, because I know I need to talk to my friends more and I'm not doing it enough. And you don't have to get, specific to the point where it's like, call Jamie, right? Oh, let me check the chat. I missed some stuff there. Why is it so difficult to do this? Why is it so hard to find the time? Well, that's a layered question, right? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Why is it difficult to find the time?
Because our society makes us feel as if we shouldn't put ourselves first, that we should be selfless and do things for others and put ourselves last. And I think everybody here, except for you, Alvin, is a female. And so I would say gender roles are such that we put ourselves second as mothers,
Absolutely. Two very good reasons. Yeah, I think what's normalized in our culture, in our society, is, especially when we're of the sort of stage in our lives where we're developing our careers, or even just work is our main priority at that time. Yeah, society and culture kind of dictate you're supposed to just be goal oriented, driven, go, more, do the best you can, make as much money as you can, and then you can relax, right? The kids are out of the house and you've retired. I disagree with that. I know that's sort of an ethical, well, not really ethical, philosophical question as to what your beliefs are, but I do believe that we are pressured, not expressly, but rather there's this implied pressure through culture in our society that we're supposed to be taking care of things, being productive, but deprioritizing ourselves at all times, right? Like, yeah, it's nice to take a walk by the lake, but you don't need to do that. You need to get your car washed, right? Or you need to whatever, fill in the blank. And I would encourage everyone to question that line of thinking and remember that you matter and your happiness matters, and how well you're doing matters. And ultimately, you're going to be more productive and be better at being efficient and taking care of things when you are attending to your self-care and prioritizing those things that we sometimes think of as being luxuries. Trisha said, I have put a mental break reminder on my calendar every day at 10:30 as of this last Monday, and haven't been able to do it even once. What's stopping you, Trisha? That's a really good practice.
Just too many projects on the desk. There's just,
Mm.
deadlines and juggling too many things, and just don't take the time to step away and do it.
So, and I don't mean to, there's no implication behind the question I'm about to ask you, but logistically, you just feel too overwhelmed to, like, does it almost feel like another thing on your to-do list?
Not really. I guess part of it is, I'm the only one that, does all this in my office.
Mm.
So, I have lots of projects that I'm always juggling and have to get them done. And sometimes I guess I just feel guilty if I, sometimes even if I just take my little mental break and just go to the bathroom.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So it could be a lot of things, and I certainly don't want to single you out, Trisha.
That's fine.
But so we all have our sort of our conditioning, right? Not just societal conditioning, but what we grew up with parentally, what our sort of social lives look like, and what the culture of our friends and the culture of our workplace. And so it can be easy to lose what our own priorities are, or, and the reason I say all this, Trisha, is you said guilt, right?
Yeah.
So guilt to me implies this sense that you're doing something wrong by taking a moment to focus on yourself, right? And usually, and I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you, I don't know you or anything like that, but usually when we feel a sense of guilt when we're prioritizing ourselves, it's generally because we've been conditioned to some degree, that to believe that that's not okay to do. So, but I point all that out, to validate that it's not easy. It's not always easy. I'm making it sound as if just prioritize your self-care. It's, and I get it. It's not that cut and dry. It is difficult. And there are layers to everything I'm talking about, right?
Alvin,
Yes.
I think something in our office that we struggle with is, we have no doors. We're just like in a big open space. So one, it's hard to get any time to just like even focus on focus work. But when you work with people that maybe don't respect the fact that, hey, I'm on my lunch right now. This is my hour to decompress, and I'm binging whatever I'm binging. And shows, not food, just to clarify. How do you address that without coming off like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. For sure. And that's a really good point too. Just because we've decided to prioritize something in our lives doesn't mean that the whole environment around us is going to suddenly adapt to that change and respect our wishes and things of that nature. You know, in terms of communication, that could be a whole nother session, right? We could spend a whole nother hour talking about how to utilize a certain communication and draw boundaries, things of that nature. But what this brings up to me is that there are going to be challenges that you face, right? So even if you make it a priority, it's still going to be hard for you to implement a new hobby, right? And there's still going to be speed bumps along the way. You know, maybe if you work surrounded by people who are only focused on work and you know, have that sort of workaholic mentality where, you know, you never take time off. It may be harder for you to assert your new position of, I'm going to implement some focus on myself as well. If the workplace culture is such that, you know, that's frowned upon. If you're surrounded by others, you don't have, you know, your own office with the door that closes. Any number of things. And so what I encourage you to do is to consider those things when you're going through the assessment and you're looking at how can I ensure that I make these changes. You know, it's not going to be cut and dry. There's going to be those things to consider. And so consider those things when you're making your plan. So Trisha, for you, and I don't know if this is logistically a viable option for you, but for instance, just hypothetically, for instance, you know, you're surrounded by projects on your desk and maybe that involves stacks of papers. You know, maybe you turn your chair around, or maybe you have another place in your office, if you have that luxury of, you know, a sort of calm space. Like, this is my task zone and this is my, over here is where I can go to relax, or maybe you face the other direction. But you see what I'm saying? I don't know that those are good viable solutions for that, for your particular difficulty, Trisha, but we can figure out ways to mitigate the challenges we're going to face in implementing these changes. And you need to consider that, because if you face challenges right away and you don't have any idea how to get around them, you might abandon your plan to make the change in the first place.
Thank
I
you.
put up a sign. Very good. Yes. Jennifer said I put up a sign of when I'm not accessible in my office. I do the same thing, for the record. Of course, being a mental health counselor, I have a do not disturb sign on my door for when I'm in session. But sometimes I forget to turn it around. And, you know, then I'm not disturbed extra time. A whiteboard outside my office doing the same thing. Very good. Yeah, so that's maybe a form of that. And I know, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. The member that just spoke was referring to shared office space. So a whiteboard or a sign isn't going to work necessarily. But if you do have that luxury, that's a good way of communicating, hey, I need my private time right now. Christina, thank you. Okay. So in addition to talking about self-care, I want to go over a few coping skills to manage day-to-day. Primarily, this is going to be focused at stress. This is an organization aimed at our professional development, right? So stress is part of being a professional, is it not? Would anybody disagree with that?
No.
Right. So we all experience stress. It's part of our lives. And we now, when you complete this assessment, you'll have some plan at how to do day-to-day maintenance and prioritize self-care in order to protect ourselves from that stress level becoming so high. But we still need to do things to respond to stress when it is there, right? So we can be proactive and we can maintain, but we cannot only do that, because then when our stress levels or anxiety levels or whatever do rise, we got to do something, right? We have to respond to that. So I want to teach you all 2 to 3 really basic coping skills that can help with a number of things, but particularly with stress, these are really beneficial. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the share screen. Okay, so the first one is deep breathing. So forgive me for a moment. I'm gonna get back off the share screen already. Sorry. I get on my soapbox a little bit about this, and I get a little nerdy about it, not because I think you need to know all the ins and outs, but because if you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, and the physiological basis around it, you're going to be A, more likely to do it, and B, more likely to have some buy-in to it. So C, more likely to achieve results. So you know that thing when you're really upset and you're yelling at your husband and they say, just breathe, and it's really condescending and you hate it, right? That's not what we're talking about, okay? So right off the bat, I want to make sure that's clear. What we're talking about is a physiological process. When I'm talking about deep breathing, I'm talking about a physiological process. So feelings of tension, stress, anxiety, anger, fear, anything that you would classify under the sort of larger umbrella of tension is in part a physiological process. It's not simply emotional, right? So you know when you're walking down a hall and someone pops out from around the corner that you weren't expecting, and you have that jolt, right? That you take a gasp. That's our sympathetic nervous system. And that's a collection of physiological responses we have in response to danger, in response to a threat. Those same physiological processes are happening when we're simply stressed or simply anxious, or simply angry. So it's not just emotional or cognitive, it involves our bodies as well. However, when we're under acute stress or we're experiencing acute anxiety, what we naturally kind of do is turn to where we believe the source of that fear, that stress, that anxiety is, which is our brain, right? We try to think ourselves out of it. We try to problem solve. We try to plan. And I'm not saying those are bad things. Those are good things. But we're neglecting the other half of the formula. The other half of the picture there is our physiological bodies. In our sympathetic nervous system, even if we come up with a great solution in our mind, you ever notice how you have a stressful day and you're done with the day and you've got everything accomplished, but you're going home and you still feel that weight in your chest, or you still feel that tension, or your shoulders are still stiff, right? Even though you know cognitively, I've taken care of what I need to take care of today. It is over. Why am I still feeling this way? Well, it's residue. It's staying in your body. Your body is a part of that process as well. So when we engage in deep breathing, we can turn off that sympathetic nervous system and turn on our parasympathetic nervous system, which is what allows us to feel relaxed. And one of the easiest sort of ways to do this, kind of hack into our nervous systems, is through deep breathing. When we increase the oxygen in our body, it releases all the let's feel calm chemicals, right? And that's a very elementary way of explaining it, but we don't need to get into all the neuroscience behind it. But rest assured, you can look into this if you'd like. A good sort of layman's example is, you know, when you're on a plane and they talk about the masks that come down, it's oxygen. Oxygen, those masks are filled with oxygen. They come down to help keep you calm in response to acute danger, right? Because if everybody panicked and lost their minds, it'd be a bad situation. But you're more likely to survive a threat like that if you can remain calm, if you're not flooded with adrenaline and flooded. So, so how do we do this? Let's go over it. So again, we're not talking about that generic, let's take a breath, let's take a few breaths. We're talking about a really specific process. So the way to do this is to inhale through your nostrils for 4 seconds. So you must breathe in slowly in order for it to last 4 seconds. If you breathe in at your normal pace, it's not going to make it to 4. So you got to kind of sip the air through your nose for 4 seconds and count it. Not an arbitrary about 4 second breath. Count that breath in your mind. So what that does is increase the amount of oxygen we're getting in that breath. So a normal breath, say, you know, we're getting, I don't want to use like, say we're getting, all right, let's picture a cup, right? And the cup is, you know, you can have so much water in the cup. And a sip of water is however that much water is, and a gulp of water, and then a chug of water. Like these are different levels of your intake. Same with your breath, right? If you're taking a 4 second inhale, you're getting more oxygen than you are in a typical rhythmic inhale that we do all day, every day. So this gets us a greater amount of oxygen than usual. Then we hold the breath for 4 seconds. And we don't want to hold it like this, like, right? Like we can't wait to exhale. Just calmly hold that breath for 4 seconds. Let it sit in your chest. What that does is allow the oxygen to travel. Okay. Then we exhale slowly through our lips, kind of like picture there's a feather on your finger and you want to make that feather flutter a little, but you don't want to blow the feather away. Exhale slowly through our parted lips for 6 seconds. 4, 4, 6. And you repeat this. Now, I'm not suggesting this is going to solve all your problems. It is not. But if your stress level is at a 10, I assure you, practice and prove me right. This can get you down to a 7 or an 8, right? If you're at an 8, this can get you down to a 5 or a 6. Now, it's not going to eliminate stress from your life. Stress is part of our professional lives, but it can help you cope. You can do this as much as you like, right? Quite literally, if you're not speaking out loud in a meeting, you could be doing this in a meeting. You can be doing it driving a car. You can be doing it sitting in your office. It requires no change in your environment or no special circumstances to do. It is always available to you. Okay. One of the best ways to use this is for those brief mental health breaks throughout the day. And I would encourage you to do it throughout the day. Experiment with it, see how it's helpful, feel how it's helpful, when it's not. And then you can kind of, it's your Swiss Army knife. You can kind of keep it in your back pocket and take it out anytime you need it. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. So the next coping skill I want to discuss is progressive muscle relaxation. Anybody ever heard of that?
No.
Progressive muscle relaxation is simply, I'm not going to go through the script with you all. Again, I'll share that with everyone. I'll share it with Jennifer, who can disperse it to everyone. Progressive muscle relaxation is adding the tensing and relaxing of muscles to those cycles of deep breathing that I just talked about. So again, stress, anxiety, anger, fear, all of those feelings of tension are not only cognitive and emotional, but also physiological. And our muscles are involved in that as well. So when we have a stressful day and our back hurts or our neck hurts or our shoulders are filled with knots, that's all the evidence. I don't have to prove to you. Like if you've ever experienced muscle tightness after a stressful day, there's your proof, right? And so while we can use deep breathing as our Swiss Army knife, it's always available. We can do it anytime. Progressive muscle relaxation is a more dedicated practice. You need to be sitting comfortably, probably not with people looking at you because they might think you're a little funny. Ideally laying down, but all you're doing is muscle group by muscle group, adding tensing up the muscles as you're breathing in, holding that tension as you're holding the breath, and relaxing the muscle fully as you're breathing out. We're holding tension in our muscles all day, right? We're required to. In order to sit up straight, we're tensing muscles. In order to walk, we're flexing muscles, right? And it goes unnoticed a lot of the time how much tension we're holding in our muscles. And again, there's this connection when and maybe I didn't explain this fully when I was talking about the deep breathing, but when our minds are not relaxed, it sends signals to our bodies to be tense, to be ready for danger, and vice versa. When our bodies are not relaxed and they're tense and they have all this excess energy, it's telling our minds, keep going, keep thinking. You're not safe, you're not calm. You need to figure out why. Don't stop thinking, right? And so we need to cut off that loop and calm our bodies, right? So that's a way of hacking in instead of trying to think our way out of things and self-soothe, which again, those are good things to do, but it will be more effective if you include your physiological self as well. So deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation is just taking it one step further than deep breathing and relaxing your whole body, right? Not just increasing the oxygen and turning on that parasympathetic nervous system, but releasing the tension in your muscles that is informing your brain that it's not okay to be calm because your body's not calm. So if your mind's calm, there's a discrepancy there, right? We want them to be on the same page, and to get our bodies calm, it will then allow our minds to catch up. Make sense? I should also say that if you're not the kind of person that likes to read a bunch of stuff, you can be careful what your sources are, but you can find this stuff on YouTube. Just search for guided progressive muscle relaxation and then just listen to what they say and do it. You don't have to learn anything, you just follow the instructions. It's a good way to give it a shot. Okay. And the last thing I want to talk about, I know we're almost out of time, and I want to leave a little time for questions, is, mindfulness, which I'm just going to touch on. Instead of going into detail about, mindfulness can be a great sort of proactive self-care activity, mindfulness meditation. But if you're not the kind of person that's into meditation, you can practice mindfulness without it sort of involving anything spiritual or even involving trying to clear your mind, which is what we tend to think of when we hear meditation or mindfulness. We think, how am I going to sit there and not think about anything? Mindfulness doesn't have to have anything to do with not thinking about anything. In fact, sometimes it involves thinking very specifically about very specific things. But that's a whole world that could be an hour all by itself. So just sort of anecdotally, I'll say that can be a good practice as a coping skill, and that there's information about it in the packet that I'll have sent out to everybody. And then lastly, mood tracking. There's some information about this as well. But essentially, mood tracking is what it sounds like. keeping a record of our moods and checking in with ourselves regularly to see what we're feeling, not just emotionally, but also physically. And there's benefits to this in multiple ways, but chief among them, we get to know ourselves better, right? So if we're ignoring our state of being all day in the name of just being productive and getting things done, we're not recognizing when our stress is becoming uncontrollable. We're not recognizing when our muscles are tensing to the point of, causing fatigue. We're not familiar with sort of our day-to-day existence in terms of what our emotional state is. But when you track your mood, you've got to ask yourself, how do I feel? What's going on? What am I thinking about? Where is there tension in my body? And this can familiarize yourself with what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and what your body is doing. And you can get to know yourself better, and you can recognize when tension is higher than you realized. Because you're making it a practice to check in with yourself, as opposed to just passively allowing your emotional state and your physical state to be whatever it is until the day is done and you've gotten all your work done. There's a great app that I recommend for this called Daylio, Daylio. It streamlines the process of mood tracking by you just set the alerts how often you want to check in. It sends you an alert on your phone. When you get the alert, you take a second and ask yourself, what am I feeling? How am I feeling? What am I thinking about? And what am I doing? And you just log it. What's great about the app, though, is it aggregates data for you. So over time, you can look back at your scores and say, oh, that's interesting. I always feel the best on Tuesday afternoons. Why? Or I always feel the worst on Wednesday mornings. Why is that? And you can get some additional insight as to what your patterns are. Additionally, you can recognize when you're starting to slump, because sometimes we don't even recognize it. We're slumping, suddenly we are slumped, and we didn't even realize what led up to it, right? But when you're consistently checking in with yourself, that you're aware when your mood is going down, even if it's only incremental, you can see on the graph, oh, I feel a little worse this week than I did last, and I felt a little better the week before that. Like, I'm trending down, and then you can catch it, figure out why, and do what you need to do to improve your self-care. So it can be really beneficial to track your mood. Okay, so I feel like I'm being long-winded. I don't want to take up everybody's whole day. So any questions or observations?
So I'm assuming you're like the rest of us, that you've had guilt to take time for yourself.
Oh,
Has it
sure.
just been a journey to get to the point where you're comfortable prioritizing you as one of the many people that needs you to help
Yeah.
yourself?
Yes. Yeah. It takes time. It takes effort. It's developing a new habit, and it's normalizing for yourself. Like, it's okay to take care of myself. Doesn't happen overnight, and that's okay. That's why, I encourage you all, when you do the assessment, don't get hung up if there's a lot of ones on that assessment. Just try to pick out the one or two things that'll have the biggest impact for you to change, and start there. Start small. It kind of fuels itself, because when you start to make those positive changes and allow yourself to prioritize yourself, you will see the results or feel the results, and that can help positively enforce for yourself, this is okay to do, this is a good thing for me to do. And that can make it a little easier the next time not to feel guilty about it.
I like that, normalizing it. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, kind of deprogramming yourself from that societal expectation. All right, well, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for your attention and for coming and thank you, Jennifer, for having me.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I think these are valuable tools that we can all use, and I'll be filling out my form. Send me a new one, because I was going to say I'm going to go ahead and upload it and then put it out for everybody to get from our NAOP
Sure.
Google Drive. But if anybody wants to share theirs or wants to complete theirs along with me, or wants to get feedback or provide feedback for mine, you know my email address, but I'll put it in here just in case.
And I'm gonna put in my email address as well in case anybody has any questions or.
Yes, that would be perfect. I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of ones, Alvin. So many ones.
Yeah, it's
And not
okay.
probably- Not
Look.
1 3. Kim knows. I can see in her face. She knows there's gonna be no 3s.
Look, I consider myself pretty good at self-care and I still have a lot of ones.
Really?
What matters is if you are prioritizing those things that really matter to you and you're really good at, then it's okay to have some ones. Okay, so don't freak out about your ones. Just
Yeah, I'm
try to get
struggling.
the
I'm
things
still
that
working on my
really matter.
breathing.
Yeah, try to get the
I didn't
things.
realize
that really
breathing was
matter.
so hard when you have to do it for a precise amount of time.
Uh-huh.
The app is
yeah.
like 5 seconds, and 4 seconds is sort of doable, but 5 seconds is a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And so do what's comfortable for you. I'm glad you said that. If 3-3-6 works better for you, do 3-3-6. That's okay.
Yeah, I think so, because
Yeah.
5 was like a struggle.
Yeah.
4 was a little bit of struggle. 5, I was about to
Yeah.
feel like I was completely out of air.
I hear you. All right, guys. Well, Jennifer,
I
I'll
will
send
be-
you that
Go ahead.
packet right now. And
Thank you.
you guys again.
Appreciate you, Alvin. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for being such a great resource for us. We all need this
Yeah.
information, and we're all going to put it to good use. I say, guys, email, let's share with each other how we put it to good use. And, if we're still having problems, let's try to brainstorm how we can support each other to make sure that we prioritize each other, kind of like accountability partners. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to surmount this challenge that is life. So let's try to make it better for ourselves by using this tool. And I will be sending the recording as well as the attachment. I'll be sending those later today.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Alvin.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Bye, Alvin.
Thank you.
Bye, ladies. Bye, Tammy.
Hey,
Hey.
very good. This was good.
I know. I think it'll be useful, especially people will share. Because I had that feeling that she does. It's hard to figure out a way to make yourself a priority. I put myself at the end of the list. So it never gets to me.
You too.
I
Yeah,
think everybody does
you
that.
just, it's just hard. You just got to do it if you can,
Well, and you have to force yourself to do it, even if it means maybe you have to stay late or come in early or whatever to make the difference up of the time.
But see, just like now, I haven't had lunch. I've been busy all day.
Mhm.
And then I was like, I'm geared to go lunch. I was like, oh my gosh, we have professional development. Oh Lord. Then
See, I've been ordering lunch, Tammy, because I'm not going to get around to making it, or I forget to bring it if I make it.
right.
And I don't want to run to get it because then that spends up my time, my me time. So I'm like, okay, I'll order the lunch. And even though it costs money, it is what it is, It's an investment in my peace of mind of not running around like a chicken with my head cut off.
Mm.
Because otherwise I'm like running around in a line for 50 million people, and I get stressed out for being in that line too. Right,
Mhm.
Janet? I think Miss Janet's on with us.
She probably busy over there too.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
multitasking probably.
Hmm.
She's probably multitasking. I had my
We-
camera off a while ago and I was eating my lunch. You can see my leg.
I
see my leg?
was in here working.
Yeah,
Working on the phone, working.
I was checking emails, listening to this, and trying to eat in between.
Oh my God.
I know. Then I wonder why I'm tired at the end of the day. I'm like, I'm so tired. I don't know why.
Mm.
crazy, crazy, crazy. We'll
Yes,
get it
it
done
is.
though. When you fill out your form, let me know. I may need help getting down to like a couple or three to focus on. I need to focus on that breathing though. I'm horrifically bad at it. Like I got that little app and let me tell you, I struggle in the deep breathe. And it's only for a couple of seconds, but it feels like 5 years. I can't get enough oxygen. I must have very low lung capacity. Well, you know what, when COVID came, I thought I had COPD because I got sick right before COVID. And I think it was COVID, but I thought it was something else. I thought I was getting COPD. You know, 'cause sometimes people just get COPD. It's no rhyme or reason. Some people get liver disease and lung disease. They're not really doing anything to get it. It just gets it. And that's how my breathing was. I couldn't quite breathe well or deep, and it hurt. And I had to get all these different inhalers. So it was bad. So my breathing is not good.
Girl, you better be careful.
I know. Well, when you start doing your breathing, if that's on your list, let me know. I'll take some tips because this deep breathing thing is hard work. I don't think I've ever really done it before. In fact, I went one day someplace and somebody told me you're holding your breath. And I was like, oh my God, I am. When I get stressed out, I hold my breath and I don't breathe hardly at all. See,
Oh my gosh,
I got, like, no
Jennifer.
lung capacity.
Mm.
All right, ma'am. Let me let you go. I got another meeting.
Okay.
Bye.
See you tomorrow, right? We meet tomorrow, right?
Is it tomorrow?
Is
No,
it
I think it's
tomorrow?
Next Friday.
Okay.
It's the 11th, not this Friday, next Friday. I was gonna say I'm off, but it works for me, but now I think it's next Friday.
Okay. See you.
Bye.
Bye.